What's up, people? We're live. We're back live here. I'll wait for some people to join me. This is 39B of the Space Water Podcast, episode 39B, part two. We did the first part a little while ago. Hopefully the mic will stay. I got my Yeti mic wasn't working before, but I got it working now. Hopefully it stays working. I think it's the wire is messed up on it. But I can always use the mic from the camera if not. What's up, Indigo? Let me get the chat room. Indigo 1111 is here. What's up? What's up, Chloe? Welcome back. Glad you guys are here. This is the Flaming Sword of Archangel Michael in the third Secret of Fatima episode. And some people think that officially in about 1879 we went into the age of Archangel Michael, which we will get into in a little bit. And of course, this encounter happens in 1917 over the course of 6 months or so between May and October of 1917. And the hamlet, Fatima, is about 110 miles to the north of Lisbon. It's in the Cova de Areia is where the encounters happen. And it's about 3,000 feet above sea level. And in 1917, the area was pretty much a poor, rocky area that was inhabited by poor people, not many people as well. And I think the nearest large town of Laieria is about 12 miles there from there. And how long is this age supposed to last? Well, 1879 to the year 2400 is supposedly going to be the age of Archangel Michael. So, and then in the year 2400, we are supposed to enter into the age of Oraphil, Ophanil, or whatever his name is. Hold on, what is his name? Ophanil or Ophanil? You can look into the Rudolf Steiner writings. So he says that in 1879, November of 1879, we went into the age of Archangel Michael, which will continue to about 2400. I think actually it's going to accelerate faster than that. And then in the year 2400, we go into the Oriphiels age, which is spelled Oriphiel, Oriphiel. So right now, basically, what they discuss is that we are in the age of Archangel Michael versus Mammon, which is the god of materialism, the god of drug addiction, the god of money, right? The god of you know the physical sort of he's the god of hindrances. He's the 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 one that brings destructive, hindering objects and patterns in your path, right in your path of progress. And he's the creator of divine forms which work to disturb the human life, especially in the realm of infectious diseases. And these diseases, they manifest supposedly through the spiritual realms. It's talked about. and they're brought about by the god Maimon. Now, of course, this is a podcast for entertainment, right? So we're not going to get into anything related to illnesses and medical, because we really can't talk about it on here as well. But we'll do it on my Patreon one day when we'll get more into it. But we will see, most likely, um radical changes, even bacteria and things like that in the future, right? And this comes right from the spiritual realms. And we had in 1879 a huge event that took place on the astral planes. And this event brought our civilization to take a different turn. It's the way the light came, right? The way the light was experienced on the spiritual realms. And, we actually had a lot of interesting discoveries even in 1879 that has to do with the light, like electricity, right? You had Tesla and Edison going on at that time, and you also had Sir William Crookes in 1879 discovered what he called radiant matter, which ended up becoming plasma, right? So he used what's now called the Crookes tube, right? And he discovered radiant matter. And also, Sir William Crookes was heavily involved in working on with mediums to try to discover about ectoplasm, because it was big back in the day. There was these pictures of people having these ectoplasms coming out of their orifices and stuff like this, right? So Sir William Crookes, who was the one who first discovered what he called radiant matter, he actually was working with a medium that was producing this this spirit being who was manifesting, that called it him herself Katie King. But Katie King looked almost exactly like the medium that was manifesting this woman. And this woman, Katie King, she was just as real as anyone else. They were able to weigh her. She got on the scale. They were talking to her. She was in the room, but she looked incredibly like the medium, just in different clothes. And people were wondering, is this some sort of ruse? How would a very respected scientist and physicist get fooled? Was he because he had poor eyesight to begin with, and then maybe he was hoodwinked by a pretty woman, so they were thinking maybe he's, this guy's a crazy or whatever. He lost a lot of credibility. But I don't think that really a scientist like that would be that, like, why would he want to risk his reputation, first of all, and put his reputation on the line for something that was clearly just the same woman dressed in different clothes? I don't think that was the case. I think this Katie King that manifested from Sir William Crookes was most likely some sort of, not like a tulpa, but like a bilocation, right? A fracture of her psyche that gave some sort of fragment or fraction of a fractal, even, of her consciousness. And we can do another show on that in the future. But that was also in 1879 is when plasma was first discovered as radiant matter by Sir William Crookes. So those are events that I think manifested in the physical realm for certain workings of light that were transpiring in the astral realms. And this is not something that Rudolf Steiner said anything about or anything like that. I'm just mentioning some of the things that happened in 1879 that I feel is directly related to the astral plane events. And since 1879, we have taken a really, really drastic turn with technology, right? And a certain spiritual stream, or you can even say plasma stream of light began to flow in the year 1250. that Rudolf Steiner discussed, and it reached its height in 1459 when Christian Rosenkreuz was raised to the rank of Knight of the Rose Cross, the Rosicrucians. And in 1510, which is known in occultism as the age of Gabriel or Gabriel, that began. And that took place until 1879 when the age of Archangel Michael began. After that comes that age of Orphiel, and in the age of Orphiel in the year 2400, which I actually think it's going to accelerate and happen sooner. This is when the huge, monstrous conflicts rage among human beings, and there will be only a tiny handful of the population of humans remaining, and only a tiny handful of human beings are also now being prepared to keep that torch of spiritual knowledge alight in this incredible, incredible times that we are living in. All right. And if you want to go to an actual lecture that Rudolf Steiner gave on December 5th, 1907, right? Right now we're on the same date. It's now December 6th. Actually, it's my sister's birthday today. December 5th, 1907. Let's turn back the clock to a live lecture from Rudolf Steiner called Michael, the Radiating Sun. This was given in Munich, which actually is my wife's maiden name. Isn't that incredible? Munich, December 5th, 1907. Let's give this little lecture here and talk about and I'll give a little bit of brief of what he says here. Not that big, not that long. Let's do this. And you guys also can support me right here at the super chat. You can support me at themysticalspiral.com at the PayPal. You also can go to the mysticalspiralstore.com and find my products. We got 15% off. We're sponsored by the Mystical Spiral Store, of course, and you can also go to patreon.com/themysticalspiral. Michael, the Radiating Sun, from December 5th, 1907 by Rudolf Steiner, says all cultures originate in the spiritual world. That is where the planets are formed, and they in turn determine the course of our lives on the physical plane. Here on the earth, we merely witness the way in which one event follows the other according to physical laws. It says, while the great spiritual causes remain hidden from us, but the events that occur on the higher planes of our being are the real cause of physical events. To make this clear, let us look at one example. An especially important event took place on the astral plane in the year 1879 in November. Beginning at that moment, esoteric life completely changed. It changed course and became quite different from what it had been previously. The esoteric stream, and then there's a little diagram right here. Shows the astral plane, the physical world, November 1879, Maimon and Michael right there with Gabriel ending. Says, beginning at that moment, esoteric life had completely changed. Changed course, became quite different from what it had been previously. The esoteric stream, look how he words that. The esoteric stream. I mean, he's literally talking about the streams of light coming from the sun. Michael, the Radiating Sun. He's talking about sentient plasma. The esoteric stream that had been living in humanity since the 14th century was replaced by another stream. Between the 14th century and the year 1879, occult life took place in the greatest silence and secrecy. That's true. And then, under the guidance of a high spiritual being, the archangel Gabriel, it was ripening towards the year 1879. And Gabriel means announcement, it means annunciation, it means foretelling. That's why Archangel Gabriel plays the role of the messenger in the Gospels. And under Gabriel's guidance, spiritual life was ripening in complete stillness, well protected, and surrounded like a child in its mother's womb. Then, in November of 1879, on the astral plane, something quite similar to a birth occurred. What had been maturing since the 14th century could now be carried out into the world, even if only before a small minority of human beings. For the reign of Gabriel had been replaced by that of another archangel, under whose guidance we now operate, the Archangel Michael. Michael is the radiating sun through which esoteric wisdom illuminates a small human band. Under Gabriel's guidance, esoteric wisdom remained hidden, while on the physical plane, materialism was developing. But let us now view materialism as something evil, for materialism too. Let us not view materialism as something evil, for materialism too is part of the divine creative plan and has a goal and purpose in the cosmic whole. Now, however, the dark forces of materialism have taken that upper hand, and therefore the time has come for the esoteric sun to shine forth once more under Michael's radiating guidance. Michael's radiating rule will be replaced in turn by a dark, terrifying age which will begin around the year 2400. Even now, coincident with Michael, a dark god has proclaimed his power, Mammon. For occultists, Mammon is not only the god of money, Mammon is the leader of all the lower dark forces. His troops attack not just the human soul, but the physical bodies of humans as well, devouring and destroying them. Before people speak so much of bacilli nowadays, not just because we know so much more about them than we used to, but also because the bacilli have actually taken a completely new form. Look at this is Rudolf Steiner saying this on December 5th, 1907. December 5th, 1907. In the future, they will acquire even more frightening power. When the dark age approaches, there will be raging quarrels between brothers and wars between brothers. Poor human bodies will waste away, prey to dread illnesses and scourges. The seal of sin will be imprinted most invisibly onto the human body. He's talking about the human DNA. Literally, the seal of sin imprinted onto the DNA through disease. Then another archangel will appear, Oraphael, and he is the one who must come to shake humankind, to jolt it through terrifying suffering awakening to its true vocation. For this to happen in the right way, however, there must be starting now a small handful of human beings capable of spreading esoteric life during the next 400 to 600 years. Crazy, right? Should I read more? Anyone who feels an urge to participate in spiritual life under Michael's guidance is called to serve Michael and learn from him. And me, I'm literally part of the Church of Archangel Michael and Our Lady and Lord of the Trinacrian Rose. Laurie Bruno has set up the Chapel of Archangel Michael, it's called. And certain people have been getting that symbolism and being and calling on Archangel Michael, the roaring, flaming sword of the sun, the flaming sword of the cherubim, the flaming sword of Bel. And it says right here, anyone who feels an urge to participate in spiritual life under Michael's guidance is called to serve Michael and learn from him. This is the preparation for service under Oriphiel's terrifying rule. Sacrifice will be required for those who want to consecrate themselves to the spiritual life. And that doesn't mean like death sacrifice. That means like spiritual sacrifice, right? You're going to have to sacrifice things in your life. And the willingness to put oneself at the service of humanity, that's the sacrifices we're talking about, is the necessary prerequisite from anyone who seeks to receive the spiritual life. In 400 to 600 years, the handful of human beings who are now preparing themselves will be put in the service of Oriphiel so that humanity can be saved. If the people who assume the leadership then have not prepared for it by holding their own against the troops of Maimon, they will not be able to play the role assigned them under Oriphiel. Now, there many people have called these troops of Maimon the Black Lords, the Black Hats, the Dark Ones, and if you were not able to hold our own against them, humanity will not be raised from its misery. Therefore, we must set to work now with the utmost seriousness. And Rudolf Steiner has been speaking through me tonight. Literally, me finding this on a whim. I pulled this out on a whim tonight. And if this was from December 5th, 1907. But it is that when the darkest forces are at their most violent. This is the last paragraph of the speech from that day. But it is when the darkest forces are at their most violent that the brightest light also shines. See, we had like 20 people in the chat room when I was live at 2:30 or 2:45. I was hoping everybody came back, but I guess some people went to sleep. When the darkest forces are at their most violent, that the brightest light also shines. Oriphiel has assumed the leadership in the past. The last time was when Christ appeared on the earth. A period when the worst rottenness and decadence reigned all over the earth. It took terrible sufferings then for the human race to be jolted forward. And Oriphiel has been called the archangel of anger who purifies humanity with a strong hand. And then this is the last paragraph right here. The story of Christ cracking his whip at the money changers in the temple has deep meaning in it. At this darkest of times in human history, Christ appeared to save humanity. Oriphiel's reign ended 104 years later and was replaced by Anael's. Then came Zachariel, then Raphael. Raphael reigned at the time of the Renaissance, Gabriel from the 16th century to 1879, then Michael assumed the leadership around, and then around 2400 it will be Orpheel's turn again. And just at the last time, the spiritual light will shine radiance in the darkness, and Christ will appear again on earth, but in a different form. Our vocation is to receive him, to serve him. Woo! Shout out to Alexander J. Mitchell. Thank you, my brother, so much. You are so awesomely, awesomely supported as well. And we wish you the best of health and love. 1111. Thank you, my brother. Says 1111, Namaste, abundance, greetings for the prophecy come true in Aquarian age, source, golden, radiant blessings, divine, beloved, sacred earth, angelic ground crew, 144,000 plus Namaste, inner earth, angelic crew arising. And for all, thank you, 555 Ra. Now, I don't know if you just came in, Alexander, but I read the whole speech from December 5th, 1907 by Rudolf Steiner titled Michael the Radiating Sun. And we talked about how in November 1879, we shifted into the age of Archangel Michael, the flaming sword of God. Now, let's get back to this Fatima, right? Let's get back to the Fatima. On Sunday, May 13th, 1917, these three children who now I mentioned in the show that I did previously, episode 37A and B, I discussed briefly what happened prior to this. Yo, shout out to Isaac. Isaac's in the chat room. Who do we got? We got Isaac, Alexander Mitchell, the peaceful penguin, Alexander J. Mitchell, the peaceful penguin, Jimmy Satterfield, now batting, Jimmy Satterfield. He sounds like a baseball player, right? Now batting, Jimmy Satterfield. Satterfield. We got Charlotte Knight. Shout out to Charlotte. Chloe. Who else we got? Indigo 1111. Om. Aum. Aum. Yeah, so we talked about the Fatima encounters, right? Well, previous to the first Fatima encounter, we had in early 1916 Lucia dos Santos, who was age 8 at the time, and her two younger cousins, who are named Jacinta and Francisco Marto. Let me get their pictures for you. So we're going to get into that in a minute. So these are the three children right here, looking very somber after they were given what could be described as PTSD type visions of future chastisements the sun is going to lay down on the earth, the solar flare chastisements, right? And prior to these encounters, early in 1916, a year prior, Angel Lori, what's up? Oh, I did a show at 2:45 as well, the part A of this. I did part A of this beforehand. I woke up at like 2 in the morning. I went to sleep a little early last night. I don't sleep many hours. I sleep only like 4 hours a night. I've been like this for a long time. I don't sleep. I got so much going on with just, when I do sleep, I'm traveling too. I'm on missions. So incredible. Um, Definitely one of the children of the sun and children of the moon. So children of the sun are part of the moon tribe. So on in early sometime in early 1916, they had a previous encounter, a precursor to what happened in 1917, the Fatima encounters. And Lucia dos Santos and her two younger cousins that you see here, Francisco and Jacinta, were tending sheep in Chauzavella, a field that's east of Mount Cabico near Fatima. And they reported that a cloud whiter than snow had formed several times. And in this cloud, there appeared a youth about 14 or 15 years of age and dazzling in splendor. And he announced himself, said, "Do not fear. I will not harm you. I am an angel of peace. Pray with me." Now, also, during the Fatima encounters, it was a flash of light in the sky and a cloud that would appear with a small young lady, like a teenage size young lady, would appear in light above the oak tree, like a holographic image. This is like a plasma blue beam type technology coming, in my opinion, directly from the sun. Possibly crafts coming directly from the sun portal, from a portal from the sun to Earth's magnetic field, into Earth's magnetosphere, coming through the gateways of the magnetosphere and pushing itself sort of into matter as an actual physical craft from the light, and then beaming this holographic image. And they're using an oak tree because it's like a flash. It's like lightning. Lightning's going to find the oak tree. It's the highest point on the ground, and oak trees transmute light. Now, in similar encounters during Fatima, it was described like this. Now, you see the cloud above right here. You see the cloud above with the light coming down, with the young being hovering over the oak tree. This is described in much of the encounters. And the first part that I did earlier this morning, I did about an hour and was like an hour and 20-minute episode. I discussed the flash of lights, the sound of insects. Now, when Lucia, the one out of the three children, only one of the children would be interfacing with the apparition. All three children were able to see the apparition, but only one interfaced with the apparition. That was Lucia. While Lucia was interfacing with the apparition, people that also witnessed it, because after a few of the first time this happened, there was only the children involved. After they started reporting it to people, crowds started to build. And eventually 70,000 people culminated in 70,000 people in the October apparition. But as it started to build, it started with 40 people. Then it went to thousands of people. And then it went to tens of thousands of people. Now, while Lucia was communicating with the apparition supposedly was speaking perfect Portuguese to with Lucia, right? This is in Portugal. Remember, they're speaking Portuguese, right? So the apparition is speaking perfect Portuguese to Lucia. Everybody else that was around, they can hear Lucia having a conversation, but what they heard in response was the sound of the buzzing of a bee or the sound of a fly in an empty jar, or the sound of an insect, some sort of insectoid sound everyone else heard. Now, if there's some sort of technology or plasma type technology that's interfacing with one target, one specific target, the light is communicating with that target, it's quite possible they would hear some sort of metally, sort of insecty sound on the outside of it. Now, this sound has also been reported throughout history with mythologies when it comes to people that were called goddesses, right? Diana or Hecate, they would come with the and lull people to sleep with the sound of buzzing bees or the drone of bees. This is a very common attribute of ancient goddesses as well, right? And this encounter, depending on what time period you live in, of course, during 1917, they called it the Virgin Mary, even though the seers never called it the Virgin Mary. I got into this in part two earlier this morning. Whether we're talking about Lourdes, right, with Saint Bernadette, or prior to Lourdes, you had La Salle apparition, you had the Paris, France apparition in 1830. None of those people who experienced the apparition said it was the Virgin Mary. It was the response of the people that said, oh, it must be Our Lady. Same thing with Fatima. It wasn't Lucia that said it was the Virgin Mary. It was her cousin Jacinta that was there, and Jacinta's father who first said, oh, it must be Our Lady. And then the crowd followed suit. But this wasn't the Virgin Mary, and the seers had their doubts. In part one of this episode, when I was on earlier this morning, I even read the doubts the seers had as they wrote letters to the certain priests and certain authorities that, hey, you guys are the ones saying it's Mary, not me. I said it was just a young lady, a beautiful young transcendent beauty. Now, the three children that had that encounter previously in 1916, on Sunday, May 13th, 1917, is when Fatima encounters officially started. And to me, this is the sun and beings from the sun, attendants of the sun. These are the Maruts of Vedic, the Iranis of Greek. The Maruts in Vedic are those that come from the sun, from the wind of the sun, the solar wind, and they come to bring warnings to seers, warnings of chastisements, warnings of war. These are the Maruts, the attendants of the solar deities. But nowadays we call them angels. We call them, Mary, Christ. But no one ever in these counters ever said they were the mother of God, the mother of Christ. This was done by the church. And when these Marian apparitions so-called Marian apparitions transpire, the church spends a lot of money trying to figure out whether it was of diabolical origin or of divine origin. Now, why would this be? Now, I have firsthand witnessed diabolical people that have experienced diabolical visions related to Mother Mary, which seems like Mother Mary. Like I've mentioned in previous shows I did with Robert Phoenix recently, when in 1988 on Christmas Eve, a family that was very close to me, a tragedy happened when the poor mother and that poor family, the mother slaughtered her family, unalived her whole family, her husband and her two children, because the Virgin Mary was coming to her and telling her to do this. diabolical visions. And this was a Catholic woman, right? She literally went to the Immaculate Conception Church. Her name was Lily, or her name is Lillian Rotella, but now it's changed to Lillian something else. She's actually free and remarried again after spending 6 years in a mental institution. She got away with three. She murdered three people and got away with it. Basically, she only 6 years of her life she was locked up, and not even in prison, in a friggin' psych ward. So, but she had a diabolical vision from some sort of mystical woman that she thought was the Virgin Mary, that she had to bring her family to heaven, deliver her family to heaven. And during the Lord's apparitions, it was like diabolical. She was hearing, Bernadette was hearing auditory. Uh, it was Bernadette, right? They're in. Um, am I getting that right in Lord's? Yeah, so it was Bernadette. She was having like diabolical visions, diabolical auditory screams, demonic shrieks and shrills she was hearing. And she never said it was the Virgin Mary in Lourdes. It was the church that said that, right? I said in part one some of the doubts the seers have. Let me reiterate for you guys that weren't here for part one, for Angel Lori and everyone that wasn't here, right? Bernadette says Bernadette never gave the lady the name of Holy Virgin at the height of the apparitions, wrote Father Croce, who documented it. He questioned her and wrote the history of this well-known case in France, right, of Lourdes. After various encounters with the being, the young woman insisted, "It is the others who say that she is the Virgin Mary." She said it. She says, uh, also, they write about Bernadette that when she was before the image of the Lady of Lourdes that was sculpted by Mr. Fabish, Bernadette was said to have exclaimed in awe, "It is beautiful. It is beautiful, but that is not she." So Bernadette made this statement, and it's supported even by Professor Xavier Coutinho. It's spelled Coutinho. He was part of the faculty of the School of Letters of Porto and its Greater Seminary, and he was a member of the Academy of Sciences. He said that he was a witness to that. That when Bernadette saw the sculpture of Lourdes, she was like, "Oh, it's a beautiful sculpture, but that's not the one I saw. She's not. I didn't witness the Virgin Mary." And Maria dos Anjos, who was the sister of Lucia, right? This Lucia, this is Lucia right here. That's Lucia. Her sister reaffirmed this as well, right? So in 1979, May of 1979, this is many, many years later, right? Right? This happened in May of 1917. Well, when a journalist writing for the Journal de Noticias, which is the news journal, he had interviewed Lucia's sister. And after 62 years, Maria remembered that her sister had told her how a very pretty lady had appeared to her, although she was never referred to as being Our Lady, as the Virgin Lady, right? And in her memoirs, now this is Lucia, in Lucia's memoirs that she ended up writing while she was, after she went and became a nun. And remember, I mentioned in one of the first parts that she was unalived, most likely by the Vatican, in my opinion, or replaced. And we'll get back into that in a few minutes. But in her memoirs, This, you know, Lucia, the seer, she confessed that after the apparitions of May and June 1917, she considered absenting herself from the encounters out of fears that they could be the work of the devil. She thought they were some demonic force. But she reconsidered, however, as if impelled by a strange force, which is, as we shall also see soon, a component that is omnipresent in human confrontations with other intelligent life forms, right? We always have that, just like the lords, and very interesting, because if she lived in Syria, it would have been known as, ancient times. If she lived in Syria, they would have been calling her, this was an encounter of Astaroth or Atargatis, right? And the fact I did in the first part this morning, the fact that they were hearing the sound of an insect when the apparition was communicating with her, which she heard in Portuguese, else heard the sound of an insect. That is very interesting, right? And I don't think the kids at their age can fully understand what they witnessed, even, right? Or saw, even. But she was said to learn how to read and write. One of the things that the apparition told her was, you have to learn how to read and write. Now, this apparition also was seen holding beads. These don't necessarily mean that they were rosary beads. Vedic and Hindu have beads that are much older than the rosary, 108 mala beads. And this 108 beads has to do with aligning yourself to the very length of the sun. It's 108 times greater than Earth's. Same with the moon, right? And when these 108 mala beads that are chanted in Hindu and in Vedic, it literally has to do with like the Gayatri mantra and different mantras. They're chanting these mantras 108 times, even, right? This has to do with aligning to the sun, to the light, right? And if you look it up, you guys always want to know about that mystical number 108, which is also the sacred nine. It aligns directly to the sun. And I'll show you. I could prove it to you. You guys can even look it up. So let me get the actual stats. So if when we're now going into astronomy, the 108 is the approximate distance between the Earth and the Sun, which is roughly 108 times the diameter of the Sun itself. So that means if you were to line up the Sun's diameter 108 times, it would roughly equal the distance from Earth to the Sun, right? And this also is it lines up with the moon as well, I think, is in the same way, right? The distance between the Earth and the Sun equals 108 times the diameter of the Sun. The diameter of the Sun equals 108 times the diameter of the Earth, right? And this is why those chants and mantras are done 108 times. They're literally aligning themselves to the sun in many ways, right? So I think the moon as well is Let me see. Yeah. Oh, okay. So check this out. The average different distance between Earth and the moon is also roughly 108 times the diameter of the moon itself. So if you take the moon's diameter and multiply it by 108, you get approximately the average distance between the Earth and the moon as well. So, I mean, that's incredible. So that shows you about the eclipses and that we are under divine creation, right? Divine intelligence is guiding. 9 minutes left. Oh, thank you for being here, brother. The Sacred Nine. Now, like I said in a previous show before as well, these are seers, basically, right? But they're shepherds. Shepherds have been in tune with the sun throughout history. They are very in tune with nature and the sun and the weather patterns and the animal, everything. And these three were out tending sheep on Sunday, May 13th, 1917. These three were out tending sheep and in a rocky pasture called the Cova da Aria, and it was a sunny day, no clouds, no nothing. And at noon, right, high noon, when the sun is at its peak, 444. Shout out to keep shining, bro star Isaac. I love you, brother. I love all you guys. I love you, Alexander, as well, brother. Thank you for your donation. 444 is a powerful. That's my number right there. That is my number, and it's 4:44 a.m. in a lot of people's places right now. It's 5:44 here. Now it's 5:45. But very grounded, right? They're using the oak tree as an anchor as well as an antenna for the plasma light that these seers are communicating with. And they are shepherds. Shepherds are known as solar shepherds throughout history, right? They are shaman shepherds, right? The crooked staff becomes the ancient coronal mass ejection loop and solar flare, the golden noose of the sun, the crooked staff of the solar seer, right? And on Sunday, May 13th, 1917, they first have this encounter during a sunny day at noon, right at the peak of the sun. A beautiful lady appears near an oak tree or above an oak tree, like this, coming in above the oak tree like that. Look at that. You see the oak tree here? And this is the seers. You see the three children kneeling before the oak tree and the cloud. Incredible, right? Now, according to some of the sources and Lucia's memoirs, it literally says the typical thing, like right out of the movies from an alien, like, don't be afraid. I have not come here to harm you, right? It literally said, I will not harm you. Do not be afraid. And then finding the courage to speak, Lucia asked the apparition where she was, or the girl, if you want to say, where she was from. And the being said that she comes from the sky, she comes from the heavens. And then the lady made three requests. She said, I ask you to come here on the 13th day of every month at this same hour at noon. It's very important. Remember, this is a solar event. These are solar. This is a solar type technology, right? This is coming directly through the portal of the sun into the magnetosphere and then directly towards certain targets on Earth specifically. The light is beamed down, almost like from a satellite, but nature's own satellite, not an artificial one. It's literally the sun speaking to the consciousness of humanity and finding a way it's going to be able to broadcast to many people where the whole world will take attention. And I mentioned previously the climate of the world in 1917, the war and everything transpiring. And then a sickness also comes, right? These apparitions tend to be precursors to wars and plagues. Now, the lady makes those three requests. She says, "Come on the 13th day of the month at this same hour at high noon until October. Then I will tell you who I am and what I want." And she requested that the children learn how to read and write. And why did she say this? Because they were supposed to write down various things that weren't supposed to be revealed until 1960. Specific instructions were given to them later on after this apparition, during the third apparition, that they were supposed to write this down, even if they don't understand it, because in 1960 they will have to reveal. Lucia specifically will have to reveal this because she literally, this young lady literally told these three kids that two of them are going to die very shortly. And you see the faces of these children after experiencing that. Look at this. These children, after this picture, had just been told by this lady that came from the heavens that they were going to be brought to heaven and die very shortly, that she was going to take them up to heaven, and that Lucia was going to have to remain around a little longer to reveal the third secret. Yeah, generator, operator, destroyer. God. That's basically Brahma. That's basically Shiva, how he's destroyed, how he's the destroyer, how he's the creator, how he's the one who dances dances the dance of rebirth and destruction and birth and creation and rebirth and destruction, all of that. Then the Naharaj dance of Shiva. Love you always, brother. The deepest awe always. Yato, you're the best. Hey, thank you, brother. Keep it swinging. Now, she asked them to three things, right? Let me finish that. I asked you to come here on the 13th day of each month at the same hour, high noon, until October. Then I'm going to tell you who I am, what I want. Then she requested that the children learn how to read and write. And then the third thing she requests is that they say the beads each day, those beads, to pray for peace for the world and the end of the war. Then the lady parts her hands, and a great ray of light streamed from her hands directly upon the children, enveloping the children. And then a path for her opened up in the sky as if heaven were opening up to receive her. And this was the first encounter on May 13th, 1917. These are people of very humble origin, poor people that were shepherds, and you can see their very solemn faces. And right in these pictures, because they were being photographed, they're wearing their very best clothing. Even though their clothing is pretty plain and common, It's their best clothes that you see here. And you can see a lot by their faces. And they could not read or write in these pictures yet. Look at the face on Francisco. He's looked like he's about to go to war to give his life. He was just told he's a soldier that's going to heaven. Look at the look in his eyes. This is a look that's not supposed to be in a kid's his age, his eyes. He's looking like he's about to give his life for the cause. Same with Jacinta. Look at these faces on them. Does it look like people that are all happy that seen the Virgin Mary? These kids do not look happy. And look at Lucia, the one that was communicating with this with this being. Look at her face. Look at how somber. Look, he's looks like he's about to give his life for the cause. That look in his eyes. That's a look of going into war when you know you're about to die. I've seen that look in people's eyes before when they're about to go to battle. You will tremble when you see the face of God. And that's what they did. Immediately went to their knees and trembled. Doesn't just look like turmoil and hardship. The look in his eyes looks more than turmoil and hardship. It looks like more than that. More than just turmoil and hardship. It looks like he's going to the front lines. And all the different books, all the reports, the earliest reports say that the lady was a young woman of transcendent beauty, and she appeared as a luminescent form, a radiant luminescent form with clearly discernible features in a brilliant aura which surrounded her and even enveloped the children as well. And others witnessed this. She seemed to be composed of the aura and to have been even transparent, like a hologram. And of course, there was no holograms in 1917, so there was no ways to even reference that. She wore a white garment or a bluish garment with a mantle over her head. Her hands were pressed together like as if in prayer, and she held a string of luminescent white beads. It's very similar to the encounter that happens in 1968, years later, in Zaytun, Egypt. I talked about it in one of my last shows that we did on Fatima in the suit, because this is a series that we're doing here. And you guys have seen uh those those Polaroids from Zaytun, Egypt. This was from Zaytun, Egypt. Actual photographs and pictures that were taken of the luminous apparition that appeared 9 or 10 feet tall in Zaytun, Egypt. Also, similar things happened in Bayside, Queens in the 1970s with Veronica Lucan. And the people that were here in Zaytun, Egypt at the time, they literally said that this giant, like 8 or 9 foot, maybe even 10 foot tall Mary who appeared on over the chapel of this what was it, a Coptic church, a Catholic Coptic church. Um, the people that were in the crowd said that it literally looked that she was looking each and every individual directly in the eye, and it was making people tremble and go to their knees. And this is right outside Cairo, very close to the pyramids, not far. And it lasted for like 2 years. It was happening periodically, and people were taking photographs. This is one of the known pictures of it. Even though all these pictures kind of look fake to me. This was from the newspaper reports of the picture. But I think they actually do have real photographs and videos of it. Yeah, see, look, this is right. They took it from the newspaper. This is the real from a real picture of it. Oh, this was drawn. Oh, this was drawn. This one was drawn. I know they have real pictures of it though, somewhere. This was in 1968. Yeah, they had the voice of God technology for sure. This was being wielded in 1968, I think, in Zaytun, Egypt, for sure. I think the Zaytun, Egypt one might have been a similar thing that was witnessed by the children. Now, let's get back to the Fatima. There were six apparitions altogether, too, in Fatima, from May 13th to October 13th. The third appearance was the complex one, where the secrets were given. And the appearance, and they were even locked up at a certain period of time. I think they're in the third apparition or third or fourth month, they were locked up. They were imprisoned during it and questioned separately, and they were told they were going to be. Lucia was taken aside and said that they actually lied to her and said they were going to bake or drown her two cousins in boiling oil if she doesn't tell the truth, because they were trying to find out if they were lying or making all this up or not. So she still wouldn't. She actually, they took the two kids away and were pretending that they were gonna unalive those two kids, her two cousins, and she still didn't give in. She still was saying, I'm not gonna, I'm not lying. So they couldn't shake the kids, no matter how hard they tried. Now, Lucia had asked a lady, will you take the three of us to heaven soon? And the lady answered, yes, I shall soon come to take Jacinta and Francisco, but you're going to have to remain here a little longer. So imagine those two kids, Jacinta and Francisco, stoically profess themselves unafraid to be taken to heaven, and you can see them in the picture. And they died within 2 years of the apparition. 3 years from the apparition, two of those three children were already gone. And then Lucia went in to become a nun, and they took her away from her family. They gave her a vow of silence. They kept her in seclusion. They wouldn't even let her family visit her. And in 1960, when she was meant to reveal the secret, they took it from her. They wouldn't let her reveal it. And then when she reappears years later, she's a different Lucy. She's a different Lucia. They got rid of her. Now, when she was told about the two cousins going to heaven soon and all this, Lucia was being pressed to ask this apparition who she was, tell us who you are, and give us some sort of miracle so everyone else will believe that you're real. She was being pressed by the church and by society to ask the apparition to give everybody a sign. And the lady responded, "Come here every month. In October, I will tell you who I am, and I will bring a great miracle that everyone will have to believe, that the world will have to believe." And that's when 70,000 people came. Yeah, my sister was born 1968, Angel Lori. Today's my sister's birthday, too, December 6th. I'm born 1978. I'm young compared to my brother. My brother and sister are both born in the 60s, and I'm born in the late 70s. So I came really late. I came 10 and 12 years after my brother and sister. Um, but Lucia, she got the response and she conveyed to the crowd that on October they will have a sign, and many fell to their knees and started praying. Others cheered and shouted that they were lunatics and liars. But the lady continued and said, "Sacrifice yourself for sinners and say many times it is for your love for the conversion of sinners and reparation for the sins committed against the Immaculate Heart." Now, I don't think this is true, this part. I think that the church was throwing this little Immaculate Hearts of Marys and Jesus stuffs in because this was never confirmed. But as the lady spoke, she opened her hands. This is when they were given this vision. She opened her hands, and from them rays of light came out and pierced the very heart of the earth. Now, this is like a thunderbolt of Indra, a lightning bolt of the god, a solar discharge hitting the ground and opening up. And I think this being simulated that for her, simulated a solar discharge event hitting the earth, opening up the earth like a fiery pit. And I think this being gave them right from the sun. The sun is directly communicating with a human and showing the future event that is coming if the vibration of humanity doesn't collectively change. The war and materialism and hate and greed and dominance of all of this stuff that's happening. If this doesn't change, if the vibration of humanity doesn't change, a solar blast will come upon the planet. And she literally opened up her hands. Rays of light came from her hands and pierced the very heart of the earth. And the place where the earth has been pierced was now a sea of fire for the children. They're the only ones that were able to see this. And plunged in this fire were devils and lost souls as if they were red hot coals. And then these floated about in the conflagration, carried about by the flames, issuing clouds of dark smoke. Sparks fell in great conflagrations among shrieks and groans of sour sorrows and despair. And these children were so frightened that they almost died. They were given like PTSD type vision. But the lady continued and she said, "You see hell where these poor souls are going. To save them, you have to do what I tell you, for many souls will be saved and there will be peace." She said the World War I But she didn't say World War One. She said the war is going to end. But at the time, that was World War One that was taking place. Yeah, volcanic activation for sure. This is what the solar discharge brings. Solar thunderbolts vault activate volcanism. They activate earthquakes. They open up the ground and activate volcanoes, right? Well, she said the war is going to end, but if they don't stop offending God, another and worse one will begin in the reign of Pius the 11th. Specifically, then she said, when you shall see a night illuminated by an unknown light, know that is the great sin. I mean, she said, when you shall see a night illuminated by an unknown light, know that it is the great sign that God gives you that he is going to punish the world for its crimes by means of war, by hungers, and by persecution of the church and the Holy Father. So the being literally said that they're going to persecute the church and the Holy Father. I don't think this is the Virgin Mary. Then the lady went on to enunciate a prediction, which at that time was incomprehensible, but it ends up coming to fruition. She said, to prevent this, I come to ask the consecration of Russia to my Immaculate Heart and the communion of reparation on the first Sundays. If they listen to my request, Russia will be converted and there will be peace. If not, Russia will scatter her errors throughout the world, provoking wars. Now, see, I think the first part of this was thrown in by the church. The second part, I think, is the real deal right here. They want the Russia to stop their ways. If not, Russia will scatter her errors throughout the world, provoking wars and persecutions of the church. The good will be martyred. The Holy Father will have much to suffer. Various nations will be annihilated. In the end, the Immaculate Heart will triumph. The Holy Father will consecrate Russia to me, and she will be converted, and a period of peace will be granted to the world. Now, this has to do with Russia and a World War III coming, and this has been actually given to a lot of different seers through prophecies. Even Anna Maria Taigi and her 3 Day of Darkness prophecy, 3 Days of Darkness prophecy. You know, it has to do with Russia in that prophecy as well. Even with the Blue Star Kachina prophecy, it's mentioning these superpowers, right? So we're at that time right now. Right now, you literally have magnetic north moving over Russia. So the solar blast will first hit that area. Yeah, I think they twisted around what the message that they were given to her because this is just the first part of the message that was actually allowed for us to read. I think the Catholic Church tweaked it in there to put a lot of Catholic dogma in there, right? And the third secret was never given to us, right? So the lady's prediction in July of 1917 about Russia spreading its errors throughout the world and persecuting the church didn't start to become intelligible until a decade at least later after that. And a lot of stuff happened with communism in Russia and afterwards in the Catholic Church. Now, as for the unknown light that would be seen at night, confirming that another great war was coming, on the night of January 25th, 1938, this happened. An extraordinary aurora event was displayed, was seen all over Europe. It was extending as far south as northern Italy into France, Spain, and even Portugal. And these auroras are usually only confined to the Arctic Circle, these types, but World War II began 12 months later after these auroras. That was the unknown light that was shown at night. And it was directly the sun speaking through auroras. Solar storms is what brings auroras. These are the Maruts. These are the roaring children of Rudra. It was the fourth apparition, August 13th, where the children weren't even present. They were forcibly taken from their families by the authorities, and they were held, under threat of death and imprisonment. And at the time of that August 13th event, when they were in prison, there were about 18,000 people congregating in the Cova area, and they were impatient, and the authorities had to release them. And it says, as these 18,000 people were impatient, resentment started to mount when it was explained to them why the young seers were absent at the event. And as the anger and the shouts and the protests started to escalate, there occurred a formidable clap of thunder in a cloudless sky. This sounds familiar, right? Same thing that happened with the beginning of their apparitions. And the crowd ran for cover because they thought it was the first thought that the authorities had placed bombs at the site. Now, because two earlier shrines even had crudely erected at the tree trunk of the oak tree and had already been dynamited by authorities. But as the crowd was scrambling, there was a brilliant flash of light over the spot of the apparitions where the usual apparitions take place, which everyone witnessed, including the spying authorities. The sun lost its brilliance and the atmosphere became hazy. A small whitish cloud formed around the trunk of the tree. It was very light, like mist or smoke, golden and very beautiful. It began turning crimson red, then rose, then yellow, then blue, and in rapid succession, it manifested all the colors of the rainbow. Now, this is the actual color of the sun. We actually see the sun gold, but it's actually white. The reason why it's white is it's because it's a whole mesh of colors that ends up being white. And because of the spectrum, we see it gold. But I think they were given the actual vision of the sun in some of these. Oh, Angel Lori. Much love, Angel Lori. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. It's so much appreciated. I will send you a free gift. I'll get the money on January 21st because sometimes I don't know why YouTube, they're supposed to pay me on December 21st. And I did make the $100 minimum for the month, but they said I made it on December 2nd. So I'm not going to get paid till January 21st, but I can't wait. Thank you so much, Angel Lori. You're so much appreciated. You guys are the best. The best. Shout out to everybody who donated. Love you guys. I truly need it too, man. I have no car right now. Me and my daughter are taking the bus to get groceries. My car engine. The other day I started my car in 25-degree weather and my engine blew. My head gasket blew. So my car has had a good run, 15 years. 15 years I had that car. I got it brand new in September of 2009. It's a 2010, and I got it in brand new in 2009. It was a showroom car. And my mom was dying from cancer, and uh I needed a new car, so my mom helped me pick it out. It was and it's lasted all this long, man. But it's on its last now. I don't think I'll be able to fix this one. I think I got to get rid of it, but right now I'm taking the bus, so we definitely need the money. Thank you so much, Angel Lori. I really appreciate it. So during these apparitions, I told you this fourth apparition was incredible because the crowd witnessed incredible things. And as this rapid succession of colors were taking place, oh, thank you so much, Angel Lori. Um, as they saw all these lightings everywhere, the gathered people, as well as the stones and the trees, were tinted with all these radiating colors. And the Cova da Aria became alive with undulating colors. And then the colors disappeared suddenly, abruptly, and the sun resumed its usual intensity, right? So this is definitely a solar event. This is definitely solar technologies transpiring here, right? And all returned to normal excepting of course the 18,000 witnesses, the police spies, and the few priests on hand that were even disguised in civilian clothes, and all of the ones that sometime it took them a whole bunch of time to regain their composure because the 18,000 people had witnessed this event. And then later, on August 19th, Lucia, Francisco, and his brother John were tending sheep in a place called Valinos when suddenly they felt something supernatural approaching and enveloping them. They felt like some side of force enveloping. They expected that the lady was coming, and Jacinta was. They went to go fetch Jacinta, their other cousin, who was part of it. Right then, what's interesting is money had been left by different pilgrims at this Kova site, and the lady instructed that the children make these two litters. You know what litters are? They're like litters are one of those things that I think they're also called palanquins or something. You know those you ever see like in movies or in ancient times when they would have like they would carry a king on something, and there would be like these two poles that one person holds, and at the other side the other person holds the other pole, and then in the middle there's like this house thing that somebody sits in. That's a litter, right? I think it might be called a palanquin or something. So let me look it up. It's like a carry vehicle. What is it? Yeah, palanquin is similar. Yeah, a palanquin is also similar, right? So the money that the pilgrims were leaving, the lady had instructed the kids to build one of those palanquin litters with some of the money. So Lucia and Jacinta uh and two other girls dressed in white, and the other to be carried by Francisco and three other boys for the feast of for some feast that they were doing. And the rest of the money was meant for a construction of a chapel to be built there on the site. Now, I don't know how much of this is true, right? I don't know how much of that is true. That could be more Catholic manipulation so they get an because there is the Church of Fatima that was built on the spot. Right. So, but apparently the children had asked the lady to cure some sick people, and the lady said that she would cure them throughout the year. So those litters were actually built to carry images of the Lady of the Rosary for the first time in 7 years. Religious processions took place in Portugal, and because there was all sorts of anti-religious authorities going on at the time, and they were hardly dared to intervene this since several thousand people were marching in these processions at the time. You know, um, and the authorities, they had to release their young prisoners so that they could be present at the next event on September 13th because the crowd was just unruly. And the children, along with a crowd numbering about 30,000, were present on September 13th. According to Lucia, she writes in her memoirs. Now we're going to get into the last day, because the last day is what these newspaper drawings I have here is when the miracle of the sun happened, where this portal like thing opened up in the sun, and everybody witnessed it in the rain. Some people were standing there, said they saw nothing. Other people saw the sun leave its space in the sky and come down like it was going to scorch the crowd and then return to its place in the sky. But it started spinning and opening up, right? So we'll get to that in a minute. But before that, a month before that, in September 13th, the children, along with a crowd, about 30,000, were all present on September 13th. And according to Lucia's memoirs, as the hour approached, this is I'm gonna write in her words. So when I say I, it's saying it's of Lucia. She wrote, "As the hour approached, I set out with Jacinta and Francisco, land their families, and a very large crowd. But owing to the crowds, we could only advance with difficulty. The roads were packed with people, and everyone wanted to see us and speak to us. There was no human respect whatsoever. People pressed around us, begging us to place their petitions before the lady. Petitions for cures for their sons, their husbands, their wives, for those gone into the war, for people suffering from tuberculosis, and so on." And then that was the end of the quote right there. But again, the sun started to above burn with its usual intensity, right? Then the seers, they were kneeling and praying, watching, for the lady to appear, and they were being watched by 30,000 people. Imagine that, right? And now, before this, rosary beads were forbidden at the time, but now they were in the hands of most people that were attending. And at noon, the sun at its highest, the sun suddenly dims. The atmosphere turns misty, golden. Heavens to Murgatroyd, golden even. Snagglepuss is here. The sun turned to misty, golden even. A golden tint seen on the earlier occasion, right? And the gathered masses gazed in silent wonder as the sun grew even dimmer, fading to such a degree that some actually saw the moon and the stars. Now, this is at noon. Skeptics later on tried to convince the world and people elsewhere that these phenomenon were eclipses. But in fact, there was no eclipses at the time. None occurred during August and September of 1917, and this can be confirmed. And the 30,000 witnesses, they next saw a globe of light advancing from east to west, a globe of light. It traversed over most of them and passed the sight of two watching priests, several media people, and numerous police observers, and then settled down to the bottom of the hollow where the children were kneeling. The tree who first dynamited, then chopped into bits and pieces as devotional objects, had by now vanished. Right? This oak tree that was originally being used during by the apparition, had now at first was dynamited, then was chopped into pieces and sold as devotional objects. So by now it had completely vanished from the area. So there was no oak tree by the time the September apparition came around. So as the globe of light came nearer, Lucia suddenly shouted, "There she is! I see her!" And everybody except for the three young seers, no one else among the 30,000 claimed to have seen the lady. So even though it would have been easy for many to say they did, what others saw, however, at least those that were tightly packed around the children because it was crowded, said that there was a beautiful, radiant white cloud that formed and encompassed the seers. Right? Of course, the whole crowd couldn't see this, but the people that were packed around them saw this. And the enormous crowd was so tightly packed that no one could move without hurting themselves. And upon this enormous white like they're white globules, shining white globules, started to go over this enormous pack of people out of the cloudless sky above. And these falling, shining white globules started to fall on everybody, and everybody stared upwards. And the globules actually grew smaller as they neared the ground and vanished before they touched it or the faces of the assembled people. And at the time, the globules were described as either like rose petals or angel's hair. And a great jet of light coming down from high above, right? It sent down rays that broadened as they approached the amazing throng. And I show this here, right? They say, but this shows the tree there. The tree wasn't there by this time. Now, news of this event spread throughout Portugal and throughout the world. So an even larger crowd was there for October 13th, 1970, and various estimates give the size of the crowd as between 70 and 90,000. 70 and 90,000 people. And during the night of October 12th, the remnants of a storm that had originated originally in Siberia arrived over Portugal. So when October 13th arrived, it was torrential downpours in the area. You could see the rain here in these pictures, these drawings. So as the day of the scheduled apparition dawned at Fatima on October 13th, the Cova diarrhea was bleak. Black clouds were coming in, fog, there was a biting cold weather, and the rain was steady and falling and pitiless. Right? It was incredible. Photographs, you could still see photographs of people gathering with all these umbrellas, a sea of big black umbrellas, a sea of them you can see in the photographs, right? And early in the morning, at least 50,000 people had already gathered, and the number increased to between 70 and 90,000. Shortly before noon, which is the scheduled time, remember, the three young seers arrived and they were escorted by umbrella carrying members of their extensive families and all their other close associates. And the rain continued as the seers forced their way through the crowd. Every shed of grass and shrubs had been trampled, and beneath the mighty expanse of umbrellas was a vast sea of water and mud. Sanitation was becoming a problem. The civil authorities were being overworked and they were vexed and tired. And reporters and everybody were waiting for the miracle they doubted would occur, right? The seers were kneeling at the site. Noon passed and nothing happened. The enormous crowd started to get restless and threatening. Then the children indicated that the Holy Mother or the lady had arrived, right? And no one else saw anything, right? At first, the people were shouting and screaming, and then all of a sudden it got really sunny, and uh a roar of people were shouting and stuff at them, I think. And then all of a sudden she said that the lady was departing, and leaving. And when she said this, uh, right, so it was still like a little dark. This was before it actually got sunny, but she said that the lady was departing, and no one else had saw anything. So everybody started to shout, "The kids are insane! They're a fraud!" A roar started growing. Then suddenly Lucia said that the lady was pointing to the sun behind the rolling clouds. And then Lucia herself started to point to the sun and to the clouds. And all of a sudden, the clouds parted where she was pointing to. And Lucia shouted, "Look at the sun." But she didn't really need to say that because the clouds parted. Everybody was looking anyway. The sun hung suspended like a great silver disk, and the light hurt no one's eyes. There was a rustle of more than 50,000 umbrellas being closed. All faces were turned upward, as can be seen in photographs. As all watched, the sun began rotating, dancing, whirling rapidly like a giant pinwheel. And the descriptions vary. Some people saw nothing. Then the sun stopped turning, and it was repeated twice more like that. Then the third whirling of the sun then appeared on its rim a border of crimson, which flung blood red streamers of flame across the sky, reflecting on the hills, the rocks, the upturned faces. Many screams were heard, a succession of brilliant beams of color radiated from the rim of the whirling sun. Green, red, orange, blue, violet, the entire spectrum of the rainbow. The beams themselves were whirling, cascading colored lights everywhere and far towards the horizon. Many people had fallen to their knees in prayer. The sun began wobbling and then, with no warning, plunged towards the earth. Now, you could see the vision of how some people how it was drawn, how it started to twirl like that. I have up on the screen here. Um, the sun began wobbling and then, with no warning, plunged toward the earth in a zigzag path, growing in size as it came near. Many witnesses were shocked into immobility and fell to their knees. Some of them fell to their knees, fearing instant death, while others scrambled away on the muddy ground. Then all saw the sun reascend in the same zigzag manner it usually played in its usual place overhead. In a few seconds, it resumed its natural brilliance, now hurting the eyes of those trying to look at it. Before, people looking up at it, the sun didn't hurt their eyes. But now it returned to its original brilliance. The clouds were gone. It was a brilliant, calm, sunny day again. There was not a drop of water or mud anywhere now after that. And before, it was mud and rain everywhere. Everything had dried up from that encounter. And in fact, there was a dust where the mud had been. And the waterlogged shoes and boots and skirts and pants of the 90,000 people, were completely dry. The awe and the silence was profound. Manipulation of the matrix screens. Then came the tears and the roars of the people, and several skeptical media persons and police were found in weakened, nearly comatose states. The skeptics were in almost a weakened, comatose state. And it was said that the joy lit up the faces of all, for the promised miracle had been delivered. On October 29th of 1917, the photographs of people's upturned faces were published in the Portuguese newspaper Ilustração Portuguesa, and it was republished throughout the world. And hundreds of witnesses were interviewed, and most told approximately the same story. Now, in the next part that we do, I'm going to be going over the specifics of the descriptions. We're going to be going into the testimonies and even the fourth seer's testimony, the different effects on the environment, parallels in ufology cases, And of course, the fourth seer, which I'll mention a little bit about right now. So this is very interesting. Earlier this morning, I did the buzzing of bees, and now we're going to get into there actually was a fourth seer involved in this that most people don't know about. And let me get her name. So this is really incredible, the testimony of the so-called fourth seer, because all we pretty much know about is the three children. But if you read in the book here, Message from Fatima, authored by Father Dr. Luciano Guerra, who was an actual rector of the Fatima Sanctuary, describes the fourth seer, the small telepathic humanoid that was encountered. So, in 1917, an angelic apparition, according to explanation by the fourth during the fourth apparition, Carolina, a 12-year-old, had an experience. Now, Lucia never refers to the dialogue with the being. In 1947, the future bishop of Visio, Dr. Jose Pedro da Silva, he had interviewed Carolina. Aunt Maria di Capellina, so-called, said in the official statement, and still today confirms it, that her daughter, Carolina, had seen an angel taking a walk at Cova da Aria, asking that 3 Hail Marys be prayed. The father did. And afterward had asked her sister to ask the lady that what that was, and that the sister at Valino's had asked Our Lady but received no response that it was an angel. Is there any truth in this? Then he responded, I don't know. I don't remember anything. And then the response by the seer is strange. She said she can't remember a thing, yet she remembers long discourses and interminable secrets, which terms that. Wait, hold on. What are they talking about here? Oh, this is what Lucia thought about. Lucia thought about the other person's encounter. Okay, the official statement referred to by De Silva can be found in a document known by the title The Official Interrogations of 1923. It was redacted by the Viscount of Montello and consists of the following in full. All right. In Valinos, Lucia asked the lady at the request of the witness if the lady had appeared to anyone else at Cova da Aria. And the lady responded that it was not her, but that the pretty blonde figure of small stature seen by Carolina, the youngest daughter of the witness, age 12, and the young girl of 7 of Ispite on July 28th, besides the oak, had been an angel which Carolina later saw over the oak. So, what they're saying here is Lucia was asked to ask the lady if this other this because during during the third during the what is it during the fourth apparition, the another girl two other girls had encounters and they reported them. So Lucia was asked to ask the lady if she shown herself to anybody else, and the lady said it wasn't her, but it was another one of her angels, so to say, which is interesting. Now, the official documentation of the Fatima points to visits by other beings to the Cova di Aria beyond this lady that was talking to the 3 seers. And it speaks to us of other seers beyond these 3 that are known to us, right? Like Carolina Carrera as the 4th seer of Fatima. And she also says that she remembers no one, not even any priest, having questioned her before these people did that's reporting this. And she only told her mother and siblings at home. And had it not been for the canon, the priest Formaggio having invited the mother to testify her evidence, then it would have been completely lost. And this anonymity actually brought her advantages. You know, if she would have reported it at the time and not years later, right? During these official interrogations of 1923, if she would have reported it at the time, and during the interrogations of 1923, even, they would have made her become a nun. Now, it wasn't until July 22nd, 1978, a couple of weeks after I'm born, that this fourth seer of Fatima was actually interviewed. She was able to live a life. She was able to marry. Her husband was still alive when they spoke to her in 1978. She didn't have any children, but she had sisters and nieces who were around. Her life was normal. She didn't have to make sacrifices and become a nun and do all the stuff that happened to Lucia. You know, Lucia wouldn't be able to speak to anybody unless she solicited the authorization of a bishop of the church, the diocese. So they recorded her statement on July 22nd, 1978, and they published it in the book that I have. And the fourth seer of Fatima could be looked at. She said it was far away. I was watching the livestock on behalf of a landlord. The owner of the livestock asked my mother's permission to allow me to go to his house until he could procure a maid to watch the livestock. My mother let me go there until the master, the owner of the livestock, got a maid. He got someone, a maid from Coimbra. The young girl went there for me to show her the farms, the nearby village of Valados, and such. One day we sat to watch the livestock. They were sheep, and the livestock soothed from the heat. A truck of mules passed in the road headed north. It was a feast day in the north, in Santa Catarina. Since the livestock was calm, I spoke thus to the girl. Oh, Conception, let's go up there to the road, because the livestock had stayed below in a cave. Let's go up there to see if the car continues on above Cova Daria. We went to the road and we watched the car continue its climb. Afterwards, I said, "Oh, Conception, let's go. If not, the livestock will misbehave and the boss will be very angry." We came up here and toward the oak, and the oak, she indicated, was about from this wall here to the other there. They formed a corner. There were some small walls that my mother had made to enclose the oak. We began to look thus below, where a child, maybe 10 or 11 years old, no more than that, was walking. She was walking within the enclosure of stones that my mother had made to protect the oak. She went from here to there and from that side to that, and went in that way like this. She was a child of 8, 9, or 10 years of age. She wore a white dress, and it seems to me that I heard within myself, "Go there and pray go there and pray, go there and pray." Several times I said to the girl, "Don't you hear a voice?" And I said to my friend Conception, "Don't you hear a voice inside yourself?" It seemed to me that I heard within myself a voice saying to me to go to pray. "Don't you hear anything inside yourself?" And Conception answered, "No, me, I hear nothing." "Well, we need to go, or else the livestock will stray, and we'll be in scrape with the boss. He was a nice guy, but he had quite a temper for that reason. If the livestock strayed, we're going to hear about it." Afterwards, we went to the foot of the livestock. We got there, and the livestock were still soothed. I said, "Oh, Conception, the livestock are so peaceful. Let's go there again and see if we see the same thing." "It appears to me that I hear the same thing. Let's go there and see." We went again to the same place we had come from, and an image was then already above the oak. an image, we asked? Then it was not the same image you had seen below? I don't know if it was the same. Naturally, it was the same because the lady told Lucia that it had not been her who had come here, that it had been an angel. It was there. It was then an image above the oak, like that she's showing here. The image coming above an oak, right? So this one was saying that an image of a lady appeared above a oak and was talking to her telepathically, right? So when we get into the next episode later tonight, I'm going to go into the fourth seer's testimony even further, and we're going to talk about this telepathic being and what the being looked like, and I'll show pictures of drawings of the being as well. Now, yeah, Lucia was definitely replaced. You can see here, this is Lucia when she was a kid. This on the left is Lucia when she got to an adult, and this is the replacement Lucia on the right. You can see clearly, this Lucy on the left is this child here. You can see that clearly. Look at the difference. See, the original one's got all busted snaggletooth, right? The second one has different teeth, different chin, different face structure, all of this. This poor lady was replaced. Oaks are sacred trees. I have an oak tree in my backyard that I've been communicating with for 47 years, my whole life. And it's a very special tree. I do my crystal skull readings by putting a crystal skull council around the oak tree, and I sit within the circle. So oak trees are very powerful, and you can see right here, possibly three different Lucys. Look at the two Lucys smiling, the original and the imposter. Different everything. Different everything. Because Lucy was going to reveal the truth in 1960. And I'll get into the third secret of Fatima and more in the next episode. Thank you, everybody, for who donated. Angel Lori, everybody out there. Isaac, Alexander Mitchell, Alexander J. Mitchell. Guys, I love you so much. You guys are shining bright always. I really appreciate your love. Make sure you like and subscribe if you haven't already. Oh, by the way, we're sponsored by the mysticalspiralstore.com. And you guys can find, I still have the coupon code up, Awaken15. Look at this Herkimer Diamond pendant I just made today. Insane. That's a big size too. Look at how big it is in my hand. Nice big size Herkimer Diamond with the silver copper tensor coil. And it's on sale only $75.88, and you get 15% off $75.88 if you use the coupon code. And whoever makes the next order, I'm going to give these shards of pink morganite gemstone. I was going to make a pendant at it, but it had broken half. So now there's 2 shards of pink morganite gemstone here. I'm going to include those, plus another special gift. Everybody gets free gifts. Items are going quick on my website. You see all the out of stocks. These are all items I just put up within the last 2 days, too. All these are all out of stock already. But if you see something that's out of stock that you want, I most likely can make another one just like it. There's a few. This one was just bought, the blue goldstone. If you ever get your chance to get your hands on some blue goldstone, it's amazing. Look at the Andromeda stream. I actually have a sphere of this still available. And I have a couple of more pieces of blue goldstone if somebody wants one wrapped in regular copper or silver coated copper. Let me know. They're really amazing. And of course, these shungite pieces. This is a great deal right here. Silver coated copper around the EMF protection shungite. Only at the Mystical Spiral store. You can get readings. Look at all these pieces. This is amazing. Look at this gemstone. A specimen gemstone of green fluorite. Look at the rainbow in that. Beautiful specimen here. Rainbow all over it. It's still got the rock in it too. Look at that. Beautiful. Great piece right there. Imprinted at the balanced rock. Look, this one's still available. Only $47.99, and you get 57% off. Look at that bad boy. Comes with the necklace material and a free gift. Check it out. The Mystical Spiral Store. Everybody, I love you all. Episode 39, The Flaming Sword of Archangel Michael and the Third Secret of Fatima, will be live tonight at 9 p.m. Eastern, and we'll be continuing the series. I'm gonna try to do almost daily podcasts, everybody. So please come and support